Welcome to a day that's not raining or snowing. So that's a good thing. Yeah. All right. Today we're on step 3. It'd be nice if you're on step 3. It'd be good if we're all on step 3. Maybe you are on step 3. I wanted to kind of hit a couple. I got some questions over this past week that caused me to realize I may have omitted some detail that I didn't want to mean to omit, just but for sake of time. We didn't hit when we talked about paying off your debt. And
my phone is powering off.
Thanks. Here, set those back. Set those back. Thanks. Just set the rest back. Last week we talked about paying off debt and reducing your monthly outflow as much as possible, getting rid of all of the essentials. We tried to talk a little bit in the past about what's really essential, and what's not. That's obviously a personal decision, but it's pretty black and white. We just tend to gray it up a whole lot because we tend to rationalize what's essential to us. What's essential is that you eat, you have shelter, and your family's taken care of. That's essential. Anything above that is unnecessary. And so we talked about the need to just really be intense when you go after this if you want to be successful financially in a short order. And in so doing, we then talked about the debt snowball and how to pay off our debt and the way to work through that, and the fact that we should, once we have set up our $500 or $1,000 emergency savings account that we don't touch, that we never use unless it's an emergency, and that's our little buffer between going back into debt and not when an emergency arises. Then we talked about paying off our credit cards and our unsecured debt, our non-mortgage debt, getting it all gone. Doing so, starting with the lowest payment and snowballing those payments and adding one payment to the next, to the next, to the next, to before you know it, you're paying off at a pretty high rate. And in so doing, I encouraged you to think hard about everywhere else you're spending money. Now's not the time, if you're in that phase of your life, to be worrying about investing. Okay? First and foremost, for the most part, for most folks, it is get out of debt. Get out of debt trumps just about everything. There are a few rare occasions that's not the case. We talked about those when you might be in a dire situation and you're just going to take a very long time to get out of debt because you can only clip at it due to your income or some other mitigating circumstances. Well, at that point in time, if we're talking years, you still want to proceed down the path, but you still may want to start putting a little aside so you can get compounding interest working on your favor for retirement. But that's a rare occasion. Most of us are not in that situation. And by far, any money you'd make in an investment is effectively wiped out by the interest you pay. It's just wiped out. Okay? You just don't know it yet. Okay? You don't know it yet because you're just paying that money out, and you'll get to the end of retirement and you'll go, gosh, wish we had more for retirement. Okay? But what you did is you waited and you traded a payment today for a lack of building interest for tomorrow. So I'm an advocate of stopping your investment in your retirement plans, even if your company matches. It doesn't matter. Get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. Because imagine the worst case scenario, right? What's the worst case scenario? You get to retirement without any debt versus you get to retirement with a little bit more in your retirement account and you still have debt. Which of those two do you want to be in? Okay? Because it's very likely you'll be in the latter, not the former, if you don't go after it. Seeing too many people having to stretch out. I mean, how many people do you see at Walmart that are still having to stay in the workforce simply to make an income because they didn't either plan right or they've gotten themselves in a situation whereby they can't disengage. Now, some are at Walmart because they like it. That's where Clark and I are going. We're going to join Merv up there. He got a promotion. He used to just be a greeter. Now he's running the cash register. It's like, wow. Anyways. So while I'd be an advocate of draining down your savings to your $1,000 minimum and paying off debt with it, and I know that's scary for most of you, especially if you're female, it's very scary. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that doesn't mean robbing your retirement account. Don't go into your 401k. Don't go into monies already set aside. Don't go in and pull those monies out of there. So I wasn't real clear on that when I said, hey, take down any savings you have and pay it off towards debt, because you're not making, but I don't know, Maggie, what's the going interest rate on savings these days? 0.5%, okay? And what are those guys charging you for using their money? 18, 19, 20, 22, 24, okay? So what is the best product in the world to sell? Debt. Okay, debt's the best product in the world to sell. You don't have to build anything. You just have to convince people, hey, buy this, debt. Okay, buy debt from me, okay, because I'm going to make, 18, 19, 20, 24, 27% on your money. I'm going to go borrow it at 3 and 4. So don't rob your retirement. Don't downgrade a 401k. Don't pull money out of whatever you may have that's already set aside for retirement. Just quit adding to it. Instead, pay off the debt. Pay off the debt. Let that money continue to work for you. Let that money continue to compound interest and do the thing it's supposed to be doing. Okay, now on to today's lesson. Finish your emergency fund. So step 1 was start emergency fund, pay off debt. Step 3 is finish your emergency fund. By the way, you still need Gazelle intensity to succeed. Gazelle intensity to succeed, right? We talked about the Gazelle. You heard Dave Ramsey and his talk about the Gazelle. He got kind of fired up about that whole concept. It's hard, it requires substantial effort, and you will have to sacrifice, okay? So trying to pretend like that's not the case, we're kidding ourselves, okay? But my job is to give you the truth, but let you know there is a nice finish line at the end of that hard work, that substantial effort, that sacrifice, that just can't be compared to continuing day after day, week after week, year after year, decade after decade to try to outrun the lion. Okay, to outrun the cheetah, okay? And what do we know about the cheetah? He only catches his prey 1 in 19 times, right? But you let him keep chasing you, guess what? He's eventually going to catch you, okay? He's eventually going to catch you. You're going to hit a downturn in your life where it's all going to come crashing down on you, okay? And you don't want that to happen. Now, when you arrive at this point, when you're at step 3, this is a great place to be. You've learned that you are responsible, right? Nobody else. This is your doing. You've stopped creating new debt, probably the single most important thing. And if you did nothing else out of this class, you got nothing else, that's the most important thing. Stop creating new debt, okay? Because you never have a chance if you don't, okay? Even if you take the entire amount of time to pay off the existing debt, you're better off if you just stop creating new debt. So you're giving more towards God's kingdom, okay? By now, by the way, when you get to this point, this step, frankly, I'm going to be real straightforward with you. If you're not giving 10%, you're not giving enough, okay? That's the bottom line. That's a biblical stance. We could talk about that later if you'd like to. You're creating and following a monthly budget. Critical. Just a critical element of what you're doing. You started an emergency fund, right? $500 or $1,000, and you're handling emergencies without debt. Those little things that pop up, you're not going to the credit card. You're going to the emergency fund when it really is an emergency. You've paid off all your debt except your mortgage. You've paid off all your debt except your mortgage. So now, breathe in, and what you start to feel is that financial peace coming your way. And I can tell you, as you start to clip off and get rid of credit cards, it's this great feeling as you cut them up and say goodbye to them forever. It's a great feeling. And it's one that, unfortunately, most Americans don't have. Most Americans don't have. So your little fill in the blank, your first fill in the blank. Blank percent of Americans would borrow on a credit card if they encountered a rainy day. 56% of us, the numbers say. So over half of us. If we encountered a rainy day, our first thought would be to borrow. That's what we would do. Okay? Well, charge it. Oh, problem? Charge it. Ooh, emergency? Charge it. 56% of us, first reaction, borrow. Get further into debt. Blank percent of Americans could not cover 1 month's expenses if they lost their income. 50. Half of the population of the United States, if they were unemployed for 1 month, would be in trouble. That's not good. Probably describes actually more than half. But they could not cover 1 month's expenses if they lost their income. Blank percent of people making less than $35,000 a year said the best way to have $500,000 at retirement is to blank, blank, blank. Close. 40% of people, 40% of people making less than $35,000 a year said the very best way that they're going to have $500,000 at retirement is to win the lottery. That's what they really believe. Okay? That's what they really, 40% of Americans believe that. Okay? That the best way to get there is to win the lottery, which means they do what? They play the lottery, which we said is what? A poor man's tax, right? It's just a different way of getting our money and funneling it back to the government. It's a poor man's tax. That's all it is. Rich people don't play the lottery. Not to get rich. Okay? They may go, hey, it's $4 billion. Here's a buck. You know, what the heck? Okay? That's a little different than, oh, okay, my numbers this week are going to be, and I'm going to use my kids' birthdays, and I'm going to do that. Yeah, it's a little different, right? So 40% of the people winning or making less than $35,000 believe that winning the lottery is going to get them $500,000 by the time they reach retirement. Your odds are 1 in 20 million to win the lottery. 1 in 20 million, 120 million. 1 in 120 million that you'll win the lottery. You're 171 times more likely to be struck by lightning. 171 times more likely to be struck by lightning over the course of your lifetime. In a given year, if you play the lottery once a year, you're like 700 times more likely to get struck by lightning. Okay, it's even worse. So, do you remember our goal? Do you remember our goal? Do you remember our goal? Get out of debt forever. Okay? You want to get to a point where you're out of debt forever. You don't go back into it. You don't wander back down that path. You're out of debt once and for all. Okay? Not to go, wow, that was great. Let's go get a new furniture set. Let's go get a new car. Let's go get it because we can afford it now. Okay? That's just stupid. Okay? Okay. So the goal is to get out of debt forever. A strong foundation includes a blank savings account, use blank for emergencies. Strong foundation includes a big savings account, okay, used only for emergencies. Okay. Strong foundation includes a blank is big, second blank is only. So a strong foundation is going to require a big savings account. Okay. Your $500,000 isn't going to cut it as you move now into this new section of your life. You will need more. You will want more. You should have more. So the 7 baby steps, right? We start an emergency fund. We pay off the non-mortgage debt. And here we are at step 3, finishing an emergency fund. Before us is investing for retirement, preparing for college, paying off the mortgage, and building wealth. Now, one more time, if I haven't said it enough, remember the point about focus and intensity. Do not be tempted to dilute your efforts. Okay? Do not be tempted to dilute your efforts. Perform one and only one step at a time. Okay? Thinking you can shortcut the process is what got you into your brilliant condition you're in right now. Okay? All right, so what do we know? Finish your emergency fund. A recap. What's going to happen? Financially speaking, it what? Is going to rain. So you need a rainy day fund. 78% of us will have, remember, a major negative event in a given 10-year period. Okay? 78%. 8 in 10 of us will have a major negative event in a 10-year period as it relates to our finances. As it relates to our finances. 78% of us will have a major negative event in a given 10-year period. Okay. Doesn't mean necessarily once every 10 years, but if you get out to the end of your life, you look back, you set down 10-year periods, and you'll find these negative events. Okay. Negative financially doesn't mean they're a negative event of their own accord, right? We talked about some of those. All right. I had a baby. Okay. That's not a negative event, I hope. Okay. But it has negative financial consequences to you as it relates to your finances. So, an emergency is what? Do you remember? Unforeseen or sudden Unforeseen or sudden, and especially what? Dangerous. Okay, that's an important word for emergency. Okay. Okay. When we see lights and sirens on an ambulance, that's an emergency. Okay? They're responding because something sudden occurred and it is potentially dangerous. Now, they may arrive and it might not be, but they don't know, so they behave as though it is. Okay? Because that's the definition of an emergency. Okay? They don't just kind of drive down the street and go, well, we'll get there when we get there, right? But similarly, every time they pull out of the station, they don't turn on the lights and siren. Sometimes they're just going to get lunch, or sometimes they're just going to fill up the rig, or sometimes they're taking it to be worked on, or sometimes they're going for training. All right. So an emergency is an unforeseen or sudden and especially dangerous occurrence demanding what? Immediate remedy. Immediate remedy. It's not something I can put off. It's not something that's going away. It's not something that's going to resolve itself. Okay? An emergency. Unforeseen, sudden, dangerous, immediate. Think of those words when you think of emergency. All right. We're going to get done early today. This will be a first. All right. Now let's talk about the emergency fund in a little more detail than we did last time. Okay, we're going to go into it because we're going to ask you to do more than you did last time. So we want to talk about its purpose, when we should tap it, and where you should keep it in a little more detail. So remember, what's an emergency fund for in the very general terms? Emergencies. And what does it do? It keeps you from going more into debt. Okay. So think of an emergency fund as fulfilling two roles. Two roles. Okay. It does both of these things, and they both are equally important. The first is to do this, to blank blank. Any ideas? No, but that's a good one. Absorb risk. Absorb risk. We're all at risk at everything we do, right? Financially speaking. Remember that 10-year, once in every 10 years, 8 out of 10 of us are going to have a negative event. Okay. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to need to go to the ER. You're going to whatever. You're going to be involved in an accident in your automobile. A meteor is going to hit your roof. You know, whatever. Things will happen. Your pipes are going to burst, and you realize you're not covered for flood damage caused by frozen pipes. So it's there to absorb risk. It's effectively insurance against all those rainy days that will, and you ought to underscore, circle, highlight somehow that word will come. Okay, preventing that return to debt. So it's insurance. You're actually buying yourself insurance. What we call that in the business is you're self-funding. Okay? Our company has a self-funded health insurance. We don't go buy a health insurance plan from some other company. We just take all the premiums, and the company puts all its money in a big pot. And we just keep investing that, and we keep letting that pot raise. And we manage our health expenses, and we pay those health expenses out of that big pot. We don't go to an insurance company. Okay? We cut out the middleman and do what they're doing for ourselves. Okay? It saves us their administrative fees. It saves us all those wonderful things. Well, that's what you're doing. You're building yourself a self-funded risk fund, something to handle all those risks in life that will come. So its first purpose is to absorb risk. Second, it is to provide blank of blank. Peace of mind. Peace of mind. Now this is where two different brains in a relationship will think differently about an emergency fund. Okay? Because this number is not going to now just be 500 or 1,000. It's going to be measured in the thousands of dollars. Okay? Somebody in the relationship is going to go, why is that money just sitting there? We could do something with that money. Why aren't we doing something with that money? Why is that money just sitting there? Somebody else in that relationship is going to be, man, am I glad we have that sitting there. That's the best source of security we've got going right now. If anything were to happen to us, we're covered. We're good. We're golden. Lose a job, we're okay. Okay? Big accident, we're okay. Hospital bills, we're good. Okay? We're covered. Security. So often it's the ladies that want the security, but not always. Depends on your mind, depends on your outlook, depends on your upbringing. So it's to provide that peace of mind. It's an investment in your family's peace of mind. It is the best kind of return you can achieve. So it is the best kind of return you can achieve, but it's not a financial return. Its purpose is not there to what? Earn interest or build wealth. This isn't the fund you get rich off of, okay? Ain't enough money to get rich off of it, first and foremost, okay? It's not there to earn interest or build wealth. Now, do we want to earn some interest on it? Yes, we do. But that's not its major purpose. It's not why it's there, okay? It's there to absorb risk and provide peace of mind to you and your family, knowing, you know what? For all those rainy days, for all those Murphys, for all those what-ifs, we're golden. We're good. It's called an investment. But now you're investing in yourself, in your own peace of mind. Okay? You're self-funding your insurance policy against Murphy. So that's its primary purpose, those two roles, absorbing risk and providing financial peace of mind. All right? So when should you use it? Okay, when do I tap that? When do we tap that fund and say, hey, time to use the emergency fund? Okay, let's think of some times that it's not time to tap the emergency fund. Vacation. Yeah, vacation is never a time to tap your emergency fund. What do you know about vacations? Yeah, they take a lot of money, and therefore what should you do? If you tend to go on one, you know they tend to repeat on some amount of frequency, right? Maybe you go once a year, or maybe you go 3 times a year on a smaller one. Whatever you do, right? Or you're in a situation where you go, hey, ain't no vacations for the next 3 years. Sorry, that's the way it is. Okay, we'll go sit in the park and enjoy ourselves for free. Okay. But if you're going to take a vacation, then that's something you can plan for. Is it unforeseen? Is it sudden? Is it dangerous? Yeah, the vacation itself could be dangerous. So it doesn't fit our classification of emergency. What else is not an emergency that would be just so tempting when we see that money sitting over there? Yeah, new fill in the blank, right? Yeah, new fill in the blank. What's that? NFL Network. Big screen TV. Yeah. Even kids going to college. It's not an emergency. Wasn't unforeseen. Wasn't sudden. Might be dangerous again. I don't know, for different reasons. But so it could be important what you have a need for, but that doesn't make it an emergency. So what do I do? Kind of, how do I evaluate this thing? All right. Here are the steps to take when deciding when to use your emergency fund. Here they are. So blank blank from the situation. Allow yourself to blank down and not act merely on blank. Yeah, step back, back away, whatever one of those terms you like, from the situation. Allow yourself to calm down and not act merely on emotion. Okay? The vast majority of you are where you are financially, as am I, because of our emotions. Okay? Our emotions. Oh, I need that. All right. Why do you think every advertiser in the world plays to your emotions? And for those of you who are analytical, they always have that 0 down at signing, 0 payments for 6 months, 0 interest, and you go, ooh, look at all those zeros. That must be a good deal, right? Emotions get us where we're at. So when we're faced with an emergency or an apparent emergency or a questionable emergency, the first and best thing to do is just kind of, hey, let's step back, let's take a big picture view of this thing, let's calm down, and let's not act merely on emotion. Okay? Now, what you may have in front of you might really be an emergency. But that doesn't mean the answer is to necessarily go tap the emergency fund that moment. You may calm down and think about it and go, hey, wait a minute, I got another way we can handle this. We don't need to tap the emergency fund. There's another way to do this. It's not like, oh, the car broke, okay, go get the emergency fund and we'll pay for it. Okay, wait a minute, the car broke, we have 2 cars. Why don't we just share a ride for the next 3 weeks, and based on our budget, we'll just stop saving a little bit for a while, and we'll have enough money to pay for that, and so let's do it that way. Okay? It's not dangerous. It's not putting you in a dangerous position. Now, you have one car and you have to get to work, a different scenario. Okay? Every situation is different. Backing away lets you calmly look at it and look for alternative ways to handle the problem. Number 2, blanket with your spouse or a trusted like-minded counselor. Discuss, right. Talk about it. Okay? Talk about it. Biggest number 1 problem in a marriage is finances. The biggest number 1 problem communicating to finances in a marriage is communication. Okay? And the lack thereof. The biggest 2 problems in a marriage are finances and communication. Odd how they're related. So discuss it with your spouse, and if you're not married, then a trusted like-minded counselor. Like-minded meaning not somebody who thinks exactly like you, but like-minded as it relates to our lesson material, right? That they know what plan you're on. They know what your goals are. They know what you're trying to achieve in life. And they're going to come alongside you and help you evaluate that situation calmly, collected, look for alternatives, and help you through it. Number 3, blank about it and blank on it. Yeah, pray about it and sleep on it. Rarely is any emergency so critical that you got to stop what you're doing and go to the bank and get your money. Okay? Just isn't. Okay? In an automobile accident. Okay, well, it's going to take some time before you get an estimate, before you get the problems resolved, before you figure out what's going on. Whatever the case may be. Now, are those times when they do, in fact, come up? Yes, they are. But even then, stop, breathe, take some time, discuss it, pray about it, step away from it, sleep on it. It's amazing what happens when you sleep on a problem. It's amazing what happens when you see it in a whole new light of day. Because something's going on in there when you're not thinking about things. Okay. Several things. First and foremost, we know our brain kind of doesn't stop working. It'll sometimes come up with a solution of its own accord without one you had thought of because you were so wrapped up in the problem. But mostly, if you've prayed about it, God's got a chance with His Spirit to work with yours and give you a fresh perspective. So in doing this, in these 3 steps, you can determine if your impulse to use the fund is a blank, or a blank emergency. And here's the problems. The first one is a rationalization. Okay? You rationalize something into being an emergency. Okay? Well, if we don't go on a vacation, she's going to have a nervous breakdown. Okay, if that's the one thing it takes to not have a nervous breakdown, you got bigger problems. Okay, you got bigger problems. What's that? So, in this way, you can determine if your impulse to use the funds is a rationalization or just a reaction. Just a reaction. It wasn't really an emergency, but we were able to calmly kind of look at this thing and see that there's another way. Okay. And our first reaction was to tap the emergency fund, but now that we've prayed about it, slept on it, thought about it, gotten some counsel, we see another alternative here that we don't have to tap into that emergency fund. Or is it a real emergency? And if it's a real emergency, then by all means, that's what the fund is there for. Use it. Some people I was reading about, some kind of life stories and experience stuff that I've been reading, trying to understand how people apply this in their real lives. Found themselves sometimes going the other way and would not tap the emergency fund for a real emergency. Okay? They would just go, well, maybe a bigger emergency is going to come and I don't want to get into that. No, it's there for that purpose. So they would rationalize a way not to use the fund and instead, maybe just this one time I'll go down and take an advance on my credit card and I'll da-da-da-da. Okay? That should never happen. Why should that never happen? Because by now you've cut up all your credit cards. So, finally, when should it be used? Do not use it for what? Blank that should be blank and blank for. Purchases that should be planned and saved for. So when should it be used? Emergency only, after calm, discussion, prayer, and sleep. Okay? So, we know what its purpose is. We know when we should tap it. Now, where should it be kept? Okay. At my house. Well, when it's $500 or $1,000, yeah, you probably can keep it close by in cash, right? But this number is going to grow now, okay? And that's not a number you want to keep laying around. 2 reasons. It's probably not the safest thing in the world to do. Secondly, too tempting. Well, I only need 50. I only need 20, and I'll pay that back. You ever done that? Okay. You ever been involved in a fundraiser? Okay. For the Boy Scouts or for the whoever? You're collecting all cash, and it's like, well, we need to look. Okay, well, I'll just take 10 out of this, and I'll pay that back. And then you get ready to turn in your funds, and you go, hey, we're $57 short, or we're $157 short. We got to write that check to pay back all those 1s and 2s and 5s and 10s we borrowed while the campaign was going on. Well, the same thing is true if you keep a lot of cash laying around, all right? It's just easy to go, hey, I need extra cash for today. I forgot to stop by the ATM and get the money out of the account that was budgeted, so I'll just take this amount. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul never gets paid back. So, where should you keep it? Remember, keep it what? Liquid. Safe is a good word too. Keep it liquid. Keep it liquid. This is money we have to be able to get at, all right? This isn't a CD. It's not wrapped up in stocks or bonds, okay? You have to have access to it. So it's easy to access. That's that next blank. It's easy to access, but not too easy, like we just said. It will help the when should it be used process, okay? If it's not so easy. Okay, you won't be tempted to go after it until you walk through that process. Blank or no blank for withdrawal or use. No penalties, right? No penalties. You don't want a fund where if you've got to tap it, you have penalties for using it. Okay? Now, what's that normally mean in today's fiscal instruments? It usually means it's best in a bank or an investment company's money market account. Okay? It's usually about the best kind of an account to put it in. A money market account is one that earns at least a little bit interest, has as compared to just sitting in a checking account, and it usually has check writing privileges. It has a minimum opening balance, so you're going to meet that minimum opening balance, and it's still accessible. It's kept in a bank. It's safe, etc. So banks have those. Investment companies have them. Difference between maybe you work with Scottrade or Fidelity or Charles Schwab or one of those, okay? And if you do, most of those folks have a money market account. Difference between a bank's and theirs is your banks are FDIC insured and the investment companies are not. Okay, so if you're a very worrisome person, then you'll want to be in a bank, and if you're not and you want a little more return on your money, then go to a Scott, a Fidelity, whatever the case may be. So best in the banks or an investment company's money market account. That's where you should keep it. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Again, if you just got it in the bank, but you don't want this one linked to everything else, you don't want it your ready reserve account, you don't want it any of that. You want it segregated from everything else, and you want it to be just a little painful. It's like, okay, I got to go find that checkbook to write that check. Okay, not tied to a debit card. Okay, not just click, 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 and I've got $30 extra in my account to pay for something I forgot I was going to have to cover. So, in an accessible liquid account with no penalties, that's kind of the key that you want to have. And there's several options for you to do that. Now the big kicker, right? Now the big kicker. How much should it be? How much should it be? Because we call this personal finance, that makes this answer personal. Okay? Every family is different. Every situation is different. And you've got to look at the factors that impact your family, right? So the answer is it depends on your personal situation. Depends on your personal situations. But a good rule of thumb, and here's the good rule of thumb, all right, is blank to blank months of expenses. 3 to 6 months of expenses. Okay? Not income. A lot of people talk about income, but this isn't an income replacement fund. This is an expense covering fund, okay? So think about what the difference is between those two things in a minute. It's based on expenses, not income. So it's based on in that first sentence there, or the second sentence there, based on expenses, not income. It is for emergencies and to cover expenses at a time when you have no income, not to replace income. So 3 to 6 months of expenses based on expenses, not income, and we'll talk about why in a minute. It's for emergencies and to cover expenses at a time when you have no income, not to replace income. So the emergency fund does two things for us. Helps us avoid risk, gives us peace of mind. That peace of mind comes into play when gee, the plant just closed down and I don't have a job anymore. Okay? So yes, you lost your income, but you don't have to have your income if you've properly managed to this point to live and carry the expense load that you currently have. You have to simply cover those expenses. Now, what's the difference? What would I do differently if I don't have a job? Would I just keep living the same way? I wouldn't be saving. So that money that is in my budget to go for savings is now gone. We're going to put savings on hold. Yeah, if it happens while I'm still debt snowballing, we're done debt snowballing, we're paying the minimums. What else? I cut the nice to haves, right? They're all gone. They're gone instantly. Cable, back to basic, okay? Get rid of the NFL package is gone, all that stuff. Just get rid of it. So we cut back to the bare bones. We could go out to dinner, even though that was in our normal budget and it was something we were handling, but we're going to stop doing that. We stop all the non-essentials. So again, you don't need the same amount of income to cover the savings, cover the retirement, cover the college fund, all those things you put on hold because you don't have a job, okay? Don't have a job. But you have sitting in the bank 3 to 6 months worth of expenses to carry you through. And if you've done your job right, it'll probably last you a little bit longer, actually, okay, if you've done your job right. So again, every situation is different. Emergency funds, remember, absorb risk. So what does that mean? That last sentence on the page. Emergency funds absorb risk. So the blank risk you have, the blank your fund. Yeah, you can go either way. You can say the less risk you have, the smaller your fund, or you can go the opposite way and say the more risk you have, the larger your fund. Okay? So the size of your fund is dependent upon the amount of risk you have, okay, financially speaking. Okay? How at risk are you financially? Here's a couple factors to consider relative to that risk. Lean towards 6 months of expenses if these conditions apply, or any of these conditions apply. You are single, or there is only one income in the household. Why? A job loss means 100% of your income's gone. Okay. Whereas if you have 2 income earners and one person loses a job, you're not totally down to zero, are you? You're down to, you plan on the lesser of the 2 incomes when you're thinking about this. Okay. Plan on the lesser of 2 incomes. So if you are single and there's only one income or there's only one income in the household, then that means you want closer to 6 months of expenses. Your income is heavily based on commissions, or you're self-employed. Or you're self-employed. What happens if you're self-employed and you get hurt? Yeah, you're kind of done. And maybe so is your business, depending on how small of a business it is and how it depends upon your involvement in that business. If you plow snow and mow lawns, and you're the one plower and the one mower, and you're injured, you're done, okay? And guess what? You probably still have a lawnmower payment and a plow payment, and et cetera, okay? So if your income is heavily based on commissions or you're self-employed. If your income is based kind of on commissions, then again, you may lean more towards 6 months, but you may not have to go quite all the way. Some folks have a full commission program. That is, if they don't do something, they don't earn any money. Or if your job situation is unstable. Okay, now all of us would kind of, maybe some of us say, well, we're all kind of unstable to some degree. That's true, so think about that. Okay, we're in a part of our economy where things are a little less stable than normal. Maybe time to pump up the emergency fund. Okay, maybe you put 1 more month. Maybe you had 4. Hey, let's take it to 5 because things are just a little unknown right now. Okay. Or if there are chronic medical problems, you just, hey, there's a chronic lifelong disease issue or whatever the case may be, or a circumstance that says, hey, this is part of our family's life and we need to make sure we're prepared for this, then you want to move yourself over towards the 6 month side. Or maybe you have other costly matters in the family. You have a child that needs special care and attention, and that's costly and something of that nature. So in those kind of situations, you want to lean towards that 6 months, okay? Lean towards the 3 months if, notice this list is a lot shorter. There are 2 income earners with steady, secure jobs. Okay, so 2 income earners with steady, secure jobs. Both those need to be in place. Okay, so what are steady, secure jobs? Probably means you work for a governmental agency, honestly. That's about as steady as you can get these days. Okay, and you've been there long enough that you're not the low folk on the totem pole if they, in fact, have to start cutting back. Okay? Like you work for the Postal Service and you've been there 15 years and you've only got 7 more years to retirement. Probably pretty good odds that you're going to be there for a while. Okay? And your husband works for the State Department and he's been there for 13 years, okay, and probably going to retire there. Those two things have to come in connection one with another, and then you will be fine to stay on the 3-month side of things. More is always better, okay? More insurance, more security. Now, figure it out. Figure it out. So remember, 3 to 6 months of expenses, the more risk you have, the larger your fund. So here's how we do it. We take total expenses, not my income, but my total expenses from the monthly budget, those essential expenses, all right? So that means bills I pay. That's my power, it's my gas, it's my water, it's my rent, it's my, those are the expenses we're talking about. My food, okay, clothing, those things that come out of my budget that need to continue on regardless of whether we have income or not, okay? So take that total expense for your monthly budget, multiply by the number of months to save. That's your number. Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? It's one of those numbers. So you pick that number and you come up with a result and you round it up. So here we go. Let's assume your expenses are $1,883 a month. You add them all up, you take your rent, you take all your expenses you have to pay to get through each month, and that's the number. So we're going to say we're on the high side, but maybe we feel a little more comfortable about our security and our job, so we're only going to pick 5 months. So we pick 5 months for our family, right? So we multiply 5 months times 1,883, and we get $9,415. Okay, so what do? We round up. What do we round up to? $10,000. We round up to $10,000, right? So round up to the next incremental 1,000. And if you're close to the next incremental 1,000, like you're 9,995, round up to 11,000. Okay, round up. Okay. Because the goal here, remember, is to think about emergencies, think about what will occur, and if perchance you've kind of forgotten about your emergency fund, you get to a position where you've kind of been able to forget about your emergency fund, which is a nice situation to be in, expenses might go up. They might creep, and so you've got to watch that. So it's not a bad idea to put a little extra in there to start with so that as they creep and you don't get back to looking at it from time to time, you're still covered. Okay? So, like we talked about, though, when you need to use your emergency fund, what do? You stop investing, you stop spending non-essential money, and you replenish the fund as soon as you can, okay? So that becomes your new snowball project, okay? You're out of debt now, but you have an emergency, you take $1,000 out, you pay the $1,000, now you pay the $1,000 back as fast as possible, okay? Or you're out of work for 45 days, and you've drawn it down by $4,000, and so now you come back in as soon as you get that job and you start feeding back your emergency fund because you stayed out of debt. Remember, you stayed out of debt. So all you have to do is pay back that emergency fund as quick as possible. So stop investing, stop spending non-essential money, and replenish that fund ASAP. All right, some other things to consider. Is there a storm on the horizon? Okay. When you look out, sometimes you can see something coming, right? You can know that something is heading your way. Okay. What are examples of those things? A baby, okay? Usually, with some level of accuracy, you'll know when the baby's going to arrive. Okay? Once you know it's coming, you'll know when it's going to arrive, right? You know your health insurance situation. You know how much that baby will cost you out of your pocket. Set that money aside. Be prepared for that, okay? It's no longer an emergency. It's not sudden, right? Okay. Now, under that circumstance, when might you tap into your emergency fund? Maybe if the delivery doesn't go well and it's a cesarean, you have more expenses than you anticipated. Okay, now I take the money I set aside already for my baby, I pay for what I could, and now I take the extra money out of my emergency fund to pay the extra that came by virtue of a C-section that we weren't planning on. Okay? So when I see something coming on the horizon like a baby, okay, or I know I'm going to lose my job, that does happen from time to time, right? Sometimes companies come out and make an announcement and say, you know, in 6 months we're shutting this operation down. Okay. Okay. You know there's a storm coming. Prepare for it. Okay. Stop your snowballing if you're in that mode. If you're still not paid off all your debt, stop what you're doing. Get your emergency fund in order, Okay? That now becomes your priority. When the storm passes, get back to snowballing. Okay? Get back to paying that debt down. How about this if you don't own a home? Where do we start talking about owning a home in here? We don't get there quite yet. Don't even think about buying a home until your emergency fund is fully funded. Okay? Now, none of us did that. I know that. Okay? None of us did that. And we're still alive. Okay? But we want to change our thinking, right? We want to help those who come behind us do it differently and do it better, okay, and smarter. Okay? Because what happens when you buy a home? What happens to your finances? They seem to run out the bottom of the sink very fast, okay? Either for new garbage disposal or repair and plumbing, or we got to fix the roof now, or we got to paint the this, that, and whatever the other thing. So we walk into a new home with a mortgage in debt, just like all of us did, by the way. We just spend forever getting out of it. We just added years to our lives of getting out to it. So this isn't about what you and I did. This is about how do we help folks who come behind us and help them do it better, right? So if you're at that point where you don't own a home right now, don't even think about it. So we're kind of doing good financially. We could afford a house payment, okay? Are you out of debt? No, you can't afford a house payment, okay? You can't, okay? Because what's going to happen? It will rain, okay? And now you're going to add a $1,000 house payment on top of your existing debt. It's going to rain. You're going to be in trouble. You lose a job. You have an accident, whatever occurs. And I'm going to stand there and say, I told you Murphy was coming. Okay? So don't even think about buying a home until your emergency fund is fully funded. Now, some good news. As you get in better financial shape, it takes more to upset your finances. Think about these two situations. You have no emergency fund, you're still in debt, and you have a $500 unexpected expense. That could be considered devastating. Okay? I'm in debt, barely getting by, I have no money set aside, and I have a $500 real emergency unexpected expense. So when you were there, that $500 extra expense, unexpected expense, was devastating. But with 6 months of savings, no debt, you won't even notice it. You'll just pay for the bill and keep moving. You'll cover the bill and keep going. And the other thing that'll happen, you don't stress about it. You just will quit stressing about it. Because usually what will happen is by the time you reach this point and you've got your emergency fund set up, your budget is cooking. And the balance of your money is going towards retirement, paying down the mortgage. Now what happens? That $500 bill comes up, you probably won't even think about touching your emergency fund. You probably just say, hey, let's not put an extra $500 towards the house this month, let's pay that problem off. Boom, done. Back on an extra $500 towards the house starting next month. So as you get better, financially speaking, as you get in more shape, this isn't different than exercise, by the way, okay? As you get better at exercise, as your body becomes more toned, et cetera, you burn calories more efficiently, okay? You work more efficiently. Everything just steps into line more efficiently. Now it's time for a reality check. Remember, we've seen these principles work. You will whine, complain, and rationalize why you are different, why the principles and steps that have been outlined will not work for you, and that you have a better way. And I'm here to proclaim that you are not different. You do not have a better way. And your way got you where you are. And I'm saying that to me as well, okay? It's not just you, it's me as well. Because I tried my better ways. It didn't work really well. I tried the whole refinancing thing. Well, we just refinance, we take this money, and we pay it on higher interest debt. Then all our problems will be gone until we incur more higher interest debt because we didn't have the discipline to take care of the problem at its root cause. We just patched it with a Band-Aid by getting a lower interest loan. And now, guess what? We just sucked up equity out of our house that we don't have anymore. That's a good decision. Okay, I made that decision twice in my life. I'm not making it again. Okay, not doing that again. Went back and looked. I think I may have shared this with some of you. I went back and found, as we were cleaning the house and preparing for sale and getting rid of old files, I found a refi package we did a number of years ago and how they paid off all these debts. Okay, and they all went to zero. And then I went back and looked at after the few years after that, and realized how quickly it took me to build those numbers right back up to the same levels again. And then how many years it took me after that to get them paid down on my own accord. Okay, not fun, but a great life experience. Great life experience. So when a person bases their blank life on blank, 99% of their blank are already made. Any ideas? Now, when a person bases their life on principle, 99% of their decisions are already made. Ever think about that? That's true in the Word of God. It's true spiritually. It's true in our marriage. It's true everywhere. If you live by principle, when a question comes up, 99% of the time you know the answer. Okay? So when you're faced with an issue financially now, knowing some of the answers, and if you choose to live by these principles of no more debt, I'm not going to do it, you know what the answer is when the question arises. Honey, could we just this one time? No. The answer is no. We're not going into debt. Okay? Huh? Because Scott said no. Right? Right, William? No. So, when you live based on these principles, 99% of your financial decisions are made for you. Hey, I'd love to, but I can't. We don't quite have our debt paid down. Hey, I'd love to, but I can't. We don't quite have our emergency fund. And people are going to look at you and go, huh? And you go, yeah, I don't have time to explain it. Okay? Because you wouldn't get it anyways. So, don't forget, pay off the debt. Don't live like this guy. This has been my favorite slide of the whole presentation. And remember this, if you choose to do today what others won't, then tomorrow you can do what others can't. Next week, we talk about retirement and investing. For some of us, that's all too terribly close. For some of you, you have a long ways to go, and fortunately, that works to your advantage if you get on it now. Okay, so we'll talk about that next week. Have a great day.
Email me.
Yeah, I will.
I even sent you another
I know, I saw it. It's an extra click or two, and it's just more complicated than I thought it would be.
So last weekend, I went down before the conference and stuff, and, went shopping, that kind of stuff, tried to make this a nice kind of relaxing.